Hi, everyone. I'm just going to be making some videos throughout the year, hopefully doing it every 3 weeks or so, trying to update what the previous 3 weeks of training was looking like. I'm sort of doing this for myself, um, just to try and track and monitor the progress of my athletes' training throughout the year, and to maybe give an insight into how we at Track Speed Development organise our sessions and how we plan them as we go into competition. So I guess this presentation series will be evolving throughout the year. Each 3 week block will have the context of the prior 3 weeks, but being the first one, the only context that we have is last season. So I do encourage you to watch other videos that we put out addressing the group for our preseason to understand, I guess, the driving philosophy of the approach that we're taking to this year for our short sprinters. But I thought that these sort of points here, weekly layout, warm-ups, elastic, acceleration, speed development are probably good things to cover, as well as our strength and conditioning, what we're testing, what we actually learned over the past 3 weeks, and perhaps what are we looking at going into the future. So we train 4 times a week at the moment, with Monday being an acceleration day, and afterwards we go into the gym to do some power work. At the moment, the main exercises for this are just loaded jumps and some power cleans, or for some people, some pulls. We also have the primary sort of accessory being a reverse lunge at the moment, which hopefully will evolve that into some step ups, and then a couple of other basic exercises as accessories. On the Wednesday, it is themed as a speed day. In the warm up, we sort of fit in some abs and some jumping. But the main component of the speed development day is a series of drills, whether it's band resisted dribbles, straight legged bounds, and some sprint float sprints. On the Thursday, there's no track or anything like that. They just get straight into the gym. The main kind of goal of this is to just improve their capacity to produce force. And so athletes are either doing a back squat or a trap bar deadlift as a primary vessel for this quality. They also do heavy RDLs at this time of the year, just to get as eccentrically strong through the hamstrings as possible while we're not running at higher speeds. And then similar to the Monday, basic accessory exercises for the groin, calves, hip flexors, hamstrings, quads, really basic stuff. And then the athletes come in on Saturday, where we have another acceleration day at the moment in the warm up, doing the same thing as Wednesday, some abs, some jumps, and then we hit the hills. I planned for some upper body work after the hills, but it proved to be a little bit too much. So we only did that for 1 of 3 weeks because everyone just went so hard on the hills, which I'm happy about. Bench presses are cool, but yeah, I'd much prefer to put the energy where it counts. And for me at this time of the year, especially, smashing yourself on a hill is an awesome way to go about it. So at the moment with the warm up, it's a little bit different to last year. So last year we really had a basic sort of dynamic moving warm up where we sort of go through lunges, scoops and stuff before going into some running drills. But after last year, sort of it was really apparent, in Sydney when we're competing, it can be up to 40 degrees out at Campbelltown, or it can be a rainy day at Homebush. At Nationals, we were given a really small amount of space to warm up and operate. So I started implementing, I guess, ground-based mobility circuits after doing some light jogging, because I thought this would be a robust solution to the lack of space, sort of weather. And I kind of want to have maybe 4 or 5 variations of these warm-up circuits, which they can do probably through the year. And I'm hoping as we get into the competitive season, they can start to pull the exercises which are most relevant to them, which exercises make them feel mobile and ready to go. On the right side here, we've got the abdominal circuits. The only exercise that's not included is a windmill. Really basic. I really wanted to see pelvis to ribs, ribs to pelvis. I wanted to do some exercises where the hips were fixed and the spine rotates. I wanted to do some exercises where the spine was fixed and the hips rotate, and then some lateral flexion as well. The first couple of rounds of just bashing through this, athletes pulled up with some serious abdoms, which I love to hear. It's not always banded. You know, we've been using weight plates, med balls, partner type stuff to create resistance. I don't really plan on going from 2x20 to 2x50. Just want them to do it faster, more elastic, more powerful. These ab circuits placed on the Wednesdays and the Saturdays as well are really great because after the Monday, they're coming off the back of power cleans and some weightlifting. They're coming back off the back of the Thursday, which they're doing heavy squats and deadlifts. So the spine gets compressed and jacked up on those days. So to include these on the Saturday morning and on the Wednesday, it's just like an extended mobility routine. The athletes tend to feel more and more ready to compete, and they also just get stronger abs, which I love. Another component of the sessions for Wednesday and Saturday has been the introduction of sort of elastic exercises. I'll categorize them as either extensive or intensive, which is pretty normal. And I have two varieties of, I guess, low amplitude multi-jump series. I want to maybe make 3 or 4
lateral line bounce
varieties,
again.
but the main point of these are to stress the Achilles and the ankle complex in a variety of ways, to build sort of calf capacity, sort of get them to become aware of their posture as the foot hits the ground in different ways. One of the circuits is a little bit more single leg in nature. The other one's double leg in nature. I like this because there's also like a coordinative component to it as well. They start to figure out how their arms, their shoulders, their hands all coordinate to become a more elastic athlete as well. So these are some things which I want to include throughout the year. And just I think there's a really good health component to the variety implementation of implementing these into a program. So to complement, I guess, the extensive nature of those jumps, we've got some intensive ones. We've just got one of those days which are a little bit more horizontal in nature, and others which are a bit more vertical in nature. These are, just hurdle hop varieties, and then I guess varieties of bounce, hopping, broad jump. None of our athletes really have a whole lot of experience in any of these exercises, so on top of it being really good just from
off the ground quick,
standpoint of becoming more elastic, I do like the problem solving element of it as well. That's really what I want to see from an off season is athletes becoming better at figuring out problems, broadening their movement qualities. Wherever they want to see these go over time is that
freeze off the box,
of those more static and slower options like double leg broad jumps and the static hops become increasingly dynamic, increasingly faster. So we're either seeing faster ground contact times or perhaps more horizontal velocity for the horizontal jumps. And I'm really excited to see where this goes as we get closer and closer to the season. Probably even bring the hurdles down and up demand for even more and more ping. So the main goal of our general prep period is just to become better accelerators and more powerful and strong. And this starts on the Monday. So at the moment, the session has been 4 sets of 10 meters, 15, 20 meters. There's classic acceleration ladders. They're just doing them in running shoes. They're not in spikes. They're mostly doing them solo as well, with a 2-point start. These have been going really well so far. There's wall back recoveries, which diminishes the intensity of the exercise. And athletes are just putting their feet down. They're just getting really good at extending the hip and flexing the hip over and over and over again. The reason why I've done it from 10 to 20 meters is, when you look at Dan Fast's descriptions of these sort of things, it's 10, 20, 30, maybe even up to 40 meters, but these athletes don't reach the same speeds as elite sprinters do. By the time they're at 20 meters, they're eclipsing 90%. If we were to put this out to 30 meters, perhaps they're even, getting close to 95%. So just for the first block, I didn't really want to overdo it on the velocity side of things. I really prioritize, I guess, just having a lot of repetitions of practicing those first 5, 6, 7 strides. And over time, we'll be stretching about to 30 meters. We'll continue to intensify it through changing footwear, changing sidling positions, changing the environment with competition as well. On the Saturday, we've got hills. These have been awesome sessions. Very similar to the acceleration on Monday. These ones, the ground contacts are just a little bit longer. It's a little less tough on the body from just a gravity standpoint, obviously, but really tough systematically from an energy system standpoint. This is 15 efforts of probably like 4 to 5 seconds of high effort, so it becomes sort of like calculated work at the same time. So I'm excited to see what more enduring training modalities look like in the future, because we're learning how to, I guess, continue to create high amounts of force for the creatine. But these have been great. The first week, everyone's backs were super pumped, which is interesting. everyone also pulled up pretty sore the following Monday. Like my rec fem was completely split down the middle of my quad. But by the third week, everyone's effort became higher and higher and higher. There's great vibes on the hill. It sort of addresses that
3, 2,
need for
1.
ticker, which I think most
Smalls.
off seasons require, just from a psychological standpoint as well. Wednesday's been speed development. You know, in the warm up, we do the abs, we do the jumps, but then the actual speed part of this, we're not really at a stage of the year where, unless you're a 400-meter athlete like Matt is in this video, where we're asking the athletes to be going 100% and really push the boundaries of speed development. We're sort of dealing this as more like an elastic technical sort of a session. Where I'm trying to get the athletes to learn how to orientate their forces vertically, and we're learning how to bounce really well. So it's more about trying to develop the technique required, and then I'm hoping that it'll have enough time over the first, 6 to 9 weeks of the training as we start to open up the acceleration efforts beyond 30 meters, where a lot of the positions and sensations and I guess even the theory and understanding of what we're trying to accomplish at high speed running is able to be brought into training as we start to do some legitimate high intensity, 50s, 60s, 70s at a later point in the year. So yeah, at the moment we're doing straight legged bounds, resisted dribbles. I really like them. The resistance isn't much, maybe 1 to 2 kilos worth of effort just with partner holding a band. And the sprint float sprint sort of a setup with 10 meters acceleration zone. This is going to be intensified by allowing for more acceleration, so this will probably turn into a 20-20-20, which is a bit more classic, and then after that we'll go into straight out 50s or 60s. So the strength and conditioning is a huge part of training at the moment. A lot of our athletes just don't have the capacity to produce high amounts of force, let alone at high
Get under
rates.
it.
So that's why I've allotted the Thursday session as a standalone gym session, not after the track, which is what we've done in the past. Because I just want to see them squat and deadlift really heavy. We haven't
Nice.
really addressed that minimum standard, I think, just even things like 2 times body weight squat. So that's what we're trying to accomplish there. As far as the cleans
Nice.
and the jumps, I'm not even measuring the velocities of those at the moment because those power cleans are just so light. I want at later points in the year, the power clean will probably be turned into some sort of hang variety. And then that stage will begin trying to prioritize, I guess, more velocity as opposed to looking at the power clean as, I guess, as a strength exercise. So yeah, the main lifts, I guess, would be the squat,
Little
the
girl walking
cleans, the
around, yeah.
jumps, the lunges, the squats, the deadlifts, and then if we have enough juice after
Get the
the
butt
hills,
down.
the bench press and the
Come
push
on.
press. The set and rep scheme for all of them are for the main lifts in week
Beautiful.
1, 3x5, in the second week,
Come on.
4x3, in the third week,
Speed.
5x2. And then the accessories have 3 sets in most of the weeks, besides the last week of the cycle, which is only 2, as there's accumulated fatigue over the previous 2 weeks. And they've already done 10 sets of power or strength exercises. The lunge has been a really fun exercise, I think. You can see there's a lot of variety, not a whole lot of overlapping exercise, in my opinion, but the lunge is interesting. Where I want that to go is I want that Monday to become a legitimate power day. The cleaning, the jumping, and the lunge will turn into a step up, the sort of small range of motion step up. But I quite like the lunge prior because I think they operate on a similar axis. There's just more range of motion involved in the reverse lunge, but it still moves in that sort of diagonal plane of motion, which the step up does as well. So I see that as a good progression before we intensify it with heavier loads and high speeds. The testing was done.
And
We didn't really do too many tests this year. The facilities which we
come
use
on, Nate.
for most of them, we don't have access to them very easily. So we're trying to make more robust and reliable solutions for testing to ensure that our athletes are getting better and better and better. At this time of the year in particular, testing is very general in nature. Jumps, let's just count the jumps as normal jumps. Front jump
Come
tests just
on.
to test elasticity or just general power and force production qualities. The local muscle testing is just like hamstrings testing, quads testing, groin testing, looking at asymmetries leg to leg, looking at just the sheer amount of force that could be produced leg to leg, and body composition, because we're still able to use the DEXs, thankfully. In the future, I really wanted to, over the next 3 weeks, we'll also be doing some mid-thigh pull stuff. We'll expand the jump testing to include broad jump varieties. And we'll also be doing some acceleration testing as well. Some of the lessons learned over the last 3 weeks, just as far as the session organization goes, it was a good insight because, we expanded the program to include more things, whether it is the abdominal work or the jumps. When you're trying to shift more work into a program and not really take away, and you don't have more time available, it can be really difficult. But I quite like that, and it's cemented in my mind that if we're in the general phase, extending the warm up is not a bad thing. It sort of just, in a general sense, increases their work capacity, especially at this time of the year. It's also really cold, so doing things like multi jump series or intensive jumps or abdominal work in the warm up is probably going to be adequate, and it's probably necessary really when things are quite cold at night to get the athletes ready to sprint. And also, I'm not too concerned at this time of the year in reaching maximal outputs as we sort of go into more specific parts of the year. A lot of those extended warm-ups with abs, jumps, things like that might be taken away as we prioritize the outputs found in the sprinting itself. But it was just a good reminder with the GPP sort of work. It's okay if it's extended. And you can fit a lot in there before you even put the spikes on or get to sprinting. The other concern that I had with session organization, or thoughts that I had about session organization, is about complexes. So complexes are often used where you do one exercise into the next, and the hope is that one exercise potentiates the next. And this could be from perhaps like an enhanced motor unit recruitment standpoint. Think about doing a heavy squat into a counter movement jump, the squat potentiating the jump. Or maybe it's even from a technical standpoint. In the past, I've done things like prowler sprints where the athletes' shin angles are really nice and low, and then sort of go into a different sprint variety and try and replicate those positions. And also thought that one exercise could improve the next. I've found that sometimes when coaching large groups, that complexes can actually be quite difficult to manage, especially when we've got male, female, fast, slow, strong, weak, and there's a lot of variety within the athlete cohort. And I really want the sessions to flow really well. I want the athletes to feel engaged and locked in throughout the whole time, and they're not just standing there, not really know where they're up to or waiting on someone else to get through the exercise at their own pace. So sometimes when it just doesn't vibe, stripping away the complexes and just doing it like straight sets. So in the instance that I'm talking about, the Wednesday session I'd planned on doing straight legged bounds into dribbles, into 50s, the sprint float sprint stuff, thinking that, oh yeah, the straight legged bounds will sort of teach the athlete to pull the heel back and use the posterior chain to create negative foot speed and land under the hip. And then we can sort of bring that movement pattern into the dribble, and sort of feel it in a more cyclical manner like sprinting. And then we can go into the 50s, and it's like we can transfer the dribble mechanic into the sprinting component of the sprint float sprint. But I found just as good results if we just dump all of the bound, the straight legged bounds first, and then we dump all the dribbles second, and then we just do the sprint float sprints third. And there's no potentiating effect which is better or worse by putting them in sequences. I think that sometimes we might even overrate the capacity for one exercise or one set of one exercise to actually create a change on the brain to adopt a movement strategy or motor unit recruitment or something like that. Instead, if we just sort of do a legitimate bolus of one exercise, that can actually make a change on the brain strategy, capacity to make a change, to sort of see movement through a different lens. So that's something which I think is exciting. The other idea to spring to my mind in a broader sense was about this sort of dichotomy of the overtrained athlete who feels really fit, or the fresh athlete who feels sort of underprepared. And I guess it's like in the past, I would have thought that the fresh athlete, the undertrained athlete who has a little bit more to give, will always be in a better position. But I think at this time of the year, it's not the worst thing to be a little bit more on the overtrained side, because I think that athletes really do enjoy the grind culture as much as they'd hate it. And it can create buy-in, where athletes feel like they need to bring themselves ready to a session. If you sort of have compensations about the intensity, they will probably abuse it unless they're really good. But that's the way it is. It also sort of shifts the responsibility. Like if you have from the coach to the athlete, if you have quite a demanding program, if you have a program which really demands for athletes to recover aggressively and they're not strong enough, good enough to get through the program, they'll often take it upon themselves and not put it on the coach. If you have a coach who takes a really minimal effective dose approach and it doesn't go well, they'll put it on the coach. Why haven't we done more? Why haven't we done this? Blah, 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 blah. And so I think at different times of the year, we need to sort of put responsibilities and sort of play around with psychology versus physiology a little bit. And finally, the last little point about this, just been on my mind, it's not right or wrong, just thinking about it, is just if you can get into a little bit of a state of overtraining and soreness, athletes sort of understand how to manage discomfort, because athletes should figure out what they should and shouldn't listen to from their body. If we get to nationals at some stage and an athlete has done the 100 heats semis finals, now it's a couple of days later and they've done 200 meter heats or semis, and they're coming onto their sixth race over the course of 3 or 4 days, they're going to be sore. Is that a bad thing, or is that a good thing? It doesn't really matter. Like if you feel that sort of level of soreness and fatigue for the first time, are you truly prepared to perform when it counts. And so I kind of want them to understand that they can be a little bit sore and still be good. They can be a little bit tired and they can still do something productive. This is the time of the year where I guess there's more wiggle room and for me, less fear of bad things happening. The intensities aren't that high for them to educate themselves about how to navigate soreness and fatigue because it is inevitable when it comes to in season when we're at the peak of our powers. Some technical things to draw on my mind about swing leg mechanics is, I guess, is the cyclical nature of running built into the action? Like, do we need to tamper with it? Pretty much is knee flexion built into the system. So when we're doing dribbles, when we're doing A skips, marching actions, in the past I've been taught to pick the heel up, pick up, to try and recreate some of the cyclical actions found when we're actually at high speed running. I'm starting to think that this might actually be a negative thing to do for running drills because I think that this is an organic part of running when you bring in high, horizontal velocity. Instead, I kind of think that there should be an emphasis not about what the heel's doing on recovery of the swing leg, but instead what the thigh is doing and how well we can accelerate it forward. And at the moment, I'm in those discussions with my athletes about trying to get them to pop the thigh forward and not to really worry about what their heel's at during the swing leg phase, because I actually want them to try to put their feet or put the hamstring into a position in which they can leverage elasticity and also that it's not in undue stress. And I sometimes think that if athletes think about picking up and cycling, they're putting themselves in a position to fail because it's too difficult to stop the forward translation of the foot and to create negative foot speed if they sort of think about picking up the heel or flexing it under their butt. It's just something on my mind. Don't know if it's right or wrong. Early acceleration. This is something that's going to be talking about a lot over the next 6 weeks as we start to get into spikes for a little bit. We start to put them in lower postures and 3-point positions, things like that. Do we need to minimize shin angle change upon ground contact? Do we need to sort of enter it and exit it at similar angles? And is like tension in the arm, how much of that is indicative of horizontal force pre-tensioning in the set position? Because if we're pushing back to create pre-tension to propel ourselves forward, how much will that sort of come on, I guess, the delts in particular? And that'll be something I'll be talking about my athletes as well. What are the next steps? Well, we're just going to be keep on trucking on with our acceleration, strength, and power development. We'll also let them rip a little bit week 6 of this general physical prep phase by testing acceleration, which is just going to be 30-meter sprint. I've altered the Saturday a little bit. So it's been 15 30-meter sprints. But I think over time, if I want to keep in 2 acceleration sessions, one of them is going to have to become a hybrid if we're also going to be addressing speed. So that'll go from 15 down to 8, but we'll do maybe 2 or 3 longer hill efforts. And I think over time that could really well transition into, maybe 6 to 8 block starts into at the start, maybe some intensive tempo. Maybe if we only do 3 or 4 block starts, then maybe we could do some speed endurance, that kind of stuff. And then one of my athletes wasn't really recovering well after the hills on the Saturday, tight quads, groins, stuff like that. So the double acceleration probably just isn't appropriate at the moment. And we're just going to ensure that things keep on rolling forward well. So I've altered that session as well. I can't really shoehorn in something if it's just not happening. Anyway, that's those first 3 weeks. I'll see you again in another 3 weeks' time.